Vicky Linnane and welcome to Embrace Therapy podcast. I am a practicing art therapist based in Ireland. In each episode, I will interview guests from various fields of therapy and well-being with the aim to encourage healing through embracing therapy. Joining me on the podcast today is Jennifer Ryan. She's based in Dublin and has her own private practice. Her background is forensic psychology, and she currently is a guidance counsellor in a secondary school. Jennifer is also currently studying to be a family therapist. We talk about what it's like being a student, a therapist, and a mother going through a pandemic. How does she juggle it all? I really hope that you enjoy this podcast episode. Here is Jennifer Ryan. So welcome to the podcast, Jenny Ryan. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you, Vicky. It's nice to be here eventually.
Oh, no.
We've been talking about it a while.
It's whenever. This is the thing. I'm very flexible. Once I put the word out that I want you, I'm happy to go with your agenda. So you're busy, you know.
I'm busy.
You've a lot on your plate. So for people that don't know you, would you like to give us a brief intro to who you are right now? Because obviously that you know who you are can be 10 years ago I was this, 10 years ago I was that. So who are you right now?
and even at that's hard to pin down because I'm feeling a little bit at a crossroads at the moment. Actually there's three different sections of my crossroads. There's three turns. So at the moment I suppose I would call myself a psychologist, but I'm working as a school counsellor for the most part. So you're right, there are so many chapters that have made me get to this point. So at the moment, I am a psychologist in private practice working part-time in a local school as a school counsellor while doing a master's in systemic psychotherapy. So that is me at the moment.
No, it's just incredible. And with that, you know, you're a parent and, you know, a student. So that's a lot to take on and working as well. So there's just so much going on, but it's beautiful because we can unpick that now and really
Excellent.
share it, you know.
Excellent. And then I'll call into college and say, actually, I've changed my mind. I'm going backwards.
Oh no. I think, you know, I'd love to start because I'm so motivated to do the course that you're on at the moment, the family therapy, because for me that's the next step. It's the step that I think it's like it keeps coming up in the work, you know, being a psychotherapist, you know, you're never just dealing with one person, you're always going to be dealing with a system. So how is it being a student again?
It's lovely being a student. I have always had an absolute love of learning. I have always been utterly energized. My husband even said to me the other day, we were having a little bit of a, you know, have you taken too much? Have you bitten off more than you can chew? And, you know, what about this and what about that? And are you really going to be in at 10 o'clock on Tuesday? And what, you know, anyway, all of that was going on. And he said, and you're tired. And I said, yeah, but I'm tired because of the cooking and the cleaning and the organizing, but actually learning energizes me. I come in now from college every Tuesday night. I don't get home till about 10 to 10 and I am buzzing. And I've always adored that feeling. I get such a kick out of that. And as you just said yourself, family therapy is one of the most fascinating things. It is absolutely, you know, after working with teenagers and young people, really my whole career, eventually getting to this point is utterly fascinating. And working with adults now is a whole new thing for me. So I've brought adults into my kind of clinic room before as parents. They're there to discuss their child. Whereas now I'm working with adults. I have my first adult client and I'm working with my first couple this week on Tuesday night. I've got my first couple coming to me as a therapist in training. So I adore it. The first year was funny because a lot of it was on Zoom. Yeah. So a lot of our clinical supervision work was on Zoom. We weren't working with families in first year. So it was okay. It was manageable on Zoom. But this year, thankfully, every Tuesday night we're in reflecting team working with families. Yeah. You see, you know what reflecting team is. I say that to some people and they go, what are you talking about? And then the lectures every one Saturday a month, which for the first time ever now will be in person. And that's so much better because you engage with the lecturer. You get to have conversations during your lunch break. You get to, I think you commit a little more when you're in there as opposed to sitting in your sitting room, nipping out to get a cup of tea. I think you engage more with the learning process when you're there. So I'm really looking forward to second year.
Oh, that's so true. Like, when I think about me, I'm doing a lot of CPDs at the moment. Well, like yourself, just love learning. Absolutely addicted to anything like that. So I'm always jumping on some workshops. But I'd be just sitting there, like, sometimes just having my pajama bottoms on and slippers, and like, I don't think that's right, you need to actually be like, no, I'm getting into the work mode. I'm I'm engaging, and I'm here and I'm present. So I think you're right. It's like the full body, whole person experience. Yeah. So, and
you can switch up when you're at home with your bottom half undressed, so to speak, and you can kind of pick up your phone and you can see what's on eBay, and you can do a little bit of that. Not eBay. That makes me sound very old, but you can do that when you're not. So God, that's awful to admit, but no, I'm so looking forward to actually not being able to do things like that and getting dressed and putting makeup on.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. So you're someone who has done a lot of studying, and I suppose I took the long way to get to art therapy, but I don't think you could say that for you, because every step of the way you've done something with what you've studied. So starting off, was the first one you started with the guidance and guidance counselling?
No, that was number 3. So the first one, the very first one actually was childcare and education in DIT when I first left school. That was my very first thing, because I didn't get the points for psychology, which is really it's really funny actually, Vicky, because when I look back on my career choices, when I was in TY, I was torn between journalism and psychology. And now you're training to be a systemic psychotherapist, and it's all about people's stories.
Yeah.
It's all about the telling people's stories. And I'm going, oh my God, so this kind of story bit was always in my blood. But I didn't get the points for psychology after school because it was about 600 points when I left school. And I had far too much fun in 6th year to get 600 points in my leaving cert. So I did a diploma in childhood care and education. And then I worked part-time as a childminder and did my psychology degree through the Open University. And that had its pros and cons, because I was allowed to explore different career areas while studying. But actually, to me, there was a big negative piece to that, is that I felt as though my degree was never taken seriously. I felt as though I wasn't as qualified as somebody else, which of course was rubbish, because I was, but there was, and it was as accredited as, as any other degree, but there was always a sense for me that I had a backspace, so to speak, in the field. So it was a funny one for me, and I think it affected my confidence probably in the early years. And then clinical psychology was the plan, as is the plan for many people when they start off. Or play therapy. Play therapy held a strand for a long time as well. But in order to do clinical, you had to get a master's under your belt before the doctorate.
Yeah.
So and I was loving the correspondence learning that I'd had from my degree. So the only master's I could do like that was really the forensic master's. So was there a big grow for forensic? Not necessarily. It was I saw it as a stepping stone. But it was fascinating. And I did have a thing, maybe I work with young offenders, so it was always young people. So I went to University of Leicester, and between the University of Leicester and my hometown, I did my master's in forensic psychology.
Yeah, gorgeous. And
then, geez, I feel as though, so stop me when it gets boring.
No, so it's fascinating.
So after my master's in forensic, I specialized in bullying, specialized in youth aggression, moral development, why aggression begins, when it ends, what factors can prevent it, can intervene to assist it, all of that. So I was fascinated in all of that. And I got my master's and then decided, right, now all the paperwork, all the boxes are ticked, I'm going to apply for my clinical. And the paperwork was all on the kitchen table ready to go, and I got very sick. And I had a real kind of moment of, what do I really want in life? It was a real, and I talk about values now so much with all my clients. What is your value system? Is your value system work and wealth and, colleagues, and is that your value system, or is your value system work-life balance, family, self-care, while maintaining a career. So I had a real crisis, not a crisis. It was a real opportunity for me to reassess.
Yeah.
Do I really want to commit to a clinical doctorate where I'm going to be working ludicrous hours in the hospital setting? So there was a real kind of, what do I want out of life? So then I got offered to fill in a part-time job in the local school as the guidance counsellor. Now, I had zero interest in anything like this at all, but it was a local job and it was handy, and I wasn't quite sure what I was doing next. I was kind of in a thought process. So I took the job, and they said to me, we think we'd like you to stay. Would you consider doing the Masters in Guidance and Counselling? So I went, oh, Jesus. So, and I was kind of lucky, because actually back then, guidance counsellors for the most part were teachers. But I was also very rare in that job, because I had trained as a psychologist, not a teacher. So again, I was at that point of I've got a foot in both camps, not sure where I'm going. But anyway, 18 years later, and I'm still in the school.
They've held on to you very well, haven't they?
I am still in the school. I know I don't do careers at all. I don't do any careers. I do all the counselling. But the mental health epidemic, so to speak, has become so kind of, I suppose, so pervasive that I am now counselling just for first, second and third years. So even within that, it's gone from careers and counselling for first to sixth years to counselling just for three, so that's how busy the job has become. So the Masters in Guidance and Counselling. So Masters in Forensic, Masters in Guidance. No, I didn't complete the Masters in the Guidance and Counselling. I just did the Postgrad Diploma. Yeah. And then like you, a few CPDs along the way. I'd trained in dialectical behavioural therapy. I did a course in London in psychotherapy for teenagers, a very brief course. And then bullying was my massive focus really through all my years in the school. And
was that because of the forensic psychology part? Was that the part that really grasped your attention? And
then it really did
overlap.
And then exactly, absolutely. It was just the fact then that I ended up working in the school that it overlapped with that bullying piece. And then I kind of was being involved. I was being called to deal with the bullying situations in the school, and I was going, actually, this job lends itself really well to me. Kind of getting great experience in this and really building a niche. Because I remember somebody saying to me on psychology graduation, find a niche.
Oh yeah.
So many people with psychology degrees out there, find a niche. So I think bullying kind of became my niche for a long time. Yeah.
And then of course you became CEO of SuperMe.
That makes me sound like a businesswoman, and it's a title and a profile that I kind of leaned into for a couple of years, and then it never felt right. Again, the value piece, the identity piece, it never felt right for me. And I remember I loved the company, I loved the work we did, but it was that running a business thing. It was kind of I even remember buying a posh handbag to fit the profile,
Sure, yeah, of course. You build yourself up. Yeah. Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. And you have to wear that. You have to stop wearing that. You have to start wearing that.
Yes.
So it was so, and I remember reading a brilliant quote towards the end of the kind of business days. And I was still in the school through that as well. So after having my second son, I set up that company. So I went part-time in school. I was 3 days in school and 2 days doing the company. Well, actually 3 days doing the company, because we did Saturdays as well. So I was in school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I ran the company Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
So fun.
And the company was absolutely amazing, done in conjunction with a UK organisation that works with bullying. And it was the most amazing experience, and humbling and life-changing, both for myself and Sarah, who worked with me, and the kids we worked with. It was such a privilege to watch the kids evolving through the work we did. So it was fabulous. It was fabulous. I wouldn't regret any of it, but it did come a day where that is not really who I am. This business person, this running companies stuff is not for me.
Do you think if it was already set up and they approached you to work for them, would that have been the ideal? Like having some
some kind of role in it rather than being boss lady kind of.
Yeah, maybe. And yeah, possibly. But then now what I'm finding in my career is bullying is part of what I do.
Yeah.
It's not what I do.
Yeah.
And I think had that situation that you just kind of painted there been what happened, I think bullying would have become everything that I did. And actually I'm loving it not being everything.
Yeah, it's good to have variety. And I suppose,
Yeah.
you know, that part of you that you talked about earlier about, you know, being torn between journalism and psychology, you know, the stories that are brought to you, yes, they're, you know, at that time it was mostly around bullying and aggression and then lack of empathy. And then I suppose as you unravel it more, it's like, what's behind that? What's the reason? And then knowing, I suppose as well, that it's more than that. It's a societal thing as well. So
completely, yeah. And then you'd have parents coming in part of those workshops, and next minute you'd start hearing the parents' stories, and you go, oh, your kid's going to have a really difficult time coming out of this one if you keep bringing in your story of still thinking about it at the age of 40 whatever, 50 whatever. So it's as you said at the beginning, it's none of us operate in isolation. We are all connected to the people we are with, whether that's our peer group in school, whether that's the teachers who we see every day, whether that's our families. We are all connected to systems. So it's so yeah, I'm loving the variety that my career has evolved into by parking the bullying in. No, not that I've parked it, but I suppose I just, you know, I closed the company and then I opened a small private practice just one afternoon a week because there was still people coming to me for the bullying work.
Yes, yeah.
And I didn't want to let it go. I loved it. I knew it had, like you saw it at work as well. It had amazing potential, you know, and kids really bounced back, so to speak, after attending the workshops.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to stop it, so I started doing it privately, and I would see maybe 1 or 2 people a week. And now that has evolved into a busy private practice that is everything from family issues to anxiety to bullying is still there, to school motivation, to school refusal, you name it. Like it's broad, and it's people's stories. Yeah.
And how do you find private practice then? Because, you know, I work in private practice as well, and it can be quite isolating. But do you find that it works for you, or do you like the team? Because you know you did work with Sarah, with SuperMe. Do you find that it's nice to have someone to bounce off, or are you comfortable with just being alone for now?
I'm comfortable. Well, see, I'm still in the school, and the school is funny. While it's a really busy atmosphere and you bounce it off your head of school or your year heads, you know, if you've got to worry about a child, you're the only one in the school doing what you do.
Yes.
So it's not as if you have a multidisciplinary team that you can go and kind of share clinical chats with. Do you know? You know, the history teacher doesn't really get what I do, and I don't really get what the science people do. Do you know? So schools are funny atmospheres like that because everybody's really good at one thing. So it's really interesting environment. So I have that. No, I'm okay with the clinical practice, with the private practice. My supervisor, like I have a great supervisor, so you bounce everything off them. And of course, being in college now, I have another supervisor, and we have PPD, professional and personal development. So I have a lot of bouncing around of what's going on for me professionally, and I can bring clients to both supervision situations. So I'm okay in that context, and it's funny watching other people as part of a reflecting team. Obviously, you're watching other people be therapists, which is not something you do ever. Yeah. And you begin to realize how different people are as therapists. Yeah. And I'm beginning to go, I'm actually very different to that. I'm not, I don't sit with my head tilted, and I don't say nothing for long periods of time, as you might have guessed. You just have to be yourself. You just have to go with what feels right for you and for the client in front of you. And I wonder whether if I was too much of a team, I might be, I don't know. I've never done it, so I don't know. I'd love to experience it.
I think it's great. You're kind of coming back to the topic of values there as well, like with who you are as a therapist and what makes you you. And you know, you've got your supervision and then like your self-care part. So like what comes in line with that for you? I know just before we started recording, you were going for walks, and I know physical exercise is so important. So what is self-care for you right now, especially with working, being mum, and studying as well?
Yeah, and it's funny because I kind of, you know, we'd mentioned that before, and I thought about it after you said it to me before, and I went, what do I do for self-care? And I know it sounds mad, but actually going to college is a bit, I know that's mad, but it is doing something for me.
Yeah.
Do you know, it really is doing something for me. And studying with the Clanwilliam Institute is a very personal experience. So it is making me a better person. And I do see going to college as self-care. I see the drive to college, playing 70s hits and singing all the way. I see that as self-care. But I do run. I like to run. I try and get out for a run, a good, 4 or 5 times a week. I have a dodgy foot at the moment, so that run has turned into a very slow walk. But yeah, and sometimes I'll listen to systemic podcasts. Sometimes I will listen to Vogue Williams and Joanne and McNally, and I'll laugh my pants off walking the beach, and people will look at me as if I'm mad. So that, I think it's just a switch off.
Yeah, and knowing and giving yourself permission for that rest and switching off. Yeah,
completely. And knowing and actually stepping away completely from the house, I think is a very good thing, and reducing standards.
Yeah,
like
good point, yeah.
I just, I have friends who don't work, who run immaculate houses, and I kind of go there and I go, oh, that'd be nice, and then I go, but I can't, because I have 3 boys, I have a big dog, I have 2 jobs I'm doing, as you said. So I just have to go, do you know what, you can't do that, and that's okay.
Exactly,
that's okay. So reducing standards, bettering myself, and fresh air.
Yeah, exactly. And there is something to be said about, we've talked about it already, but like how we had to work from home a lot of the time during the last 2 years, and that was difficult in its own way. But now getting the choice to be back in the room studying, be back in the room, and like you said, looking at other therapists and how they work, that's big learning that doesn't really always come across on the screen.
Yeah. Massive learning in that.
Gorgeous. Yeah. I suppose, we really covered quite a lot. I'm curious about the work that you're still doing in the school, because I know a lot of people listening would be used to hearing me talk to creative arts therapists. And you did mention play therapy be something that you'd be interested to. But when you're working with children in the school from first year to third year, how do you approach certain topics? Because it's tricky at that age, so obviously it's very easy to talk to you. And I know you outside of this podcast very well. But, what works for you to engage children? Like, how do you find that?
It's really funny. So sometimes you leave a therapy session and you go, dear God, what on earth you're useless. Do you know? And you kind of get into, I had one client actually in private practice. He came and we spent a whole 55 minutes talking about Love Island.
Yeah.
And we literally just, and I remember saying to him once, are you okay with how these sessions go? And, they seem to be quite free flowing, and every week we bring up something different. He went, it suits me. And he just loves the chats.
Yeah.
But that day about Love Island, I went to, the poor mother has just spent this money on me talking about Love Island. What a waste of money. But the mother texted me about 4 days later and said, I've no idea what you talked about on Wednesday, but my God. And basically he'd gone off and he'd obviously thought about what we talked about. And he came up with all these fascinating things at the weekend with his family about being real and what type of person he wanted to be and what his values were. So you think just a general chat, but again, it's about building a relationship with somebody. So sometimes those first sessions are about talking about dogs and holidays and clothes and where we buy our shoes and, depending on the client. But I have had first sessions with people that go on for an hour, sometimes even longer, where we literally just talk about our favorite type of dogs.
Yeah.
And you know, because it is about making them feel safe with you. Now that would be the minority of cases. A lot of the times they come in and they're ready to, but sometimes it's taken a huge effort for them to come to see somebody.
Meeting them where they're at is so important, though, isn't
completely.
it?
Yeah, and getting them to realize. I remember before I did private practice, I used to refer kids out to other people a lot. And they'd come back to me and they say, yeah, that's not going to work for me. You know, the therapist talked down to me, or she spoke like a school teacher, or she did this, or she didn't understand me, or she was like my mom, or, you know, and unfortunately those experiences for young people will shut them down from attending anybody else. Well, they're all like that, so I'm not going to bother. So you absolutely have to meet them at their level. And my youngest clients would probably be about 7 or 8. And with them, it's about sitting on the floor. I do a lot of card work. I do a lot of emotional regulation work. So I've got some fabulous cards, and they're actually some of the simplest, most effective tools. And I have different ones for different ages and different emotional intelligence or different emotional vocabulary levels, I suppose. But the very most basic ones are very appropriate for the 8-9 year age group. And I just lay them out in the ground and I say, I want 3 different piles. What do you feel lots of? What do you feel none of? And what do you feel sometimes? And immediately then we're into a conversation about what's going on in their world. So it's a really simple thing, but I sit on the ground. I'm getting a little old for it, but I will literally sit on the ground for a lot of my sessions with the younger ones. And COVID has made that really tricky for face-to-face.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, definitely.
Because those young clients don't get why they can't come over and look at something over my shoulder, or, you know, so, you know, the mask goes on when I have to sit on the ground, and I long for that to be over, but
you know,
we're nearly there. My older clients would be a little bit better because we'd all be vaccinated. It'll be that, you know, it's a bit safer.
Yeah. I've actually noticed a big shift in the ones that are vaccinated now and how relaxed they are again in the space. It's lovely. Properly sitting near me, like nearly elbow to elbow.
Yeah, it is. It's lovely. So, you know, once it's an over 12s, I'm, you know, this, for the most part, of course, not everybody's chosen the vaccine, and that's fine. But it's, you know, it is just meeting them where they're at their level. And some people just wanted slow. And that was a learning curve for me, because I've always been that, and I'm learning this through the family therapy as well. Sometimes it is a really slow process. And I have to get used to that, because my bias, I suppose, would be to fix it. Let's fix it. You know?
Yes, of course. Yeah. And that's also the system of the school, though. It's like, you know, I think that is the premise of the counsellor in the school, is to fix it, you know? So
completely. Yeah, completely. And that is not what, as you well know, that is not what psychotherapy is about. It's certainly not what systemic psychotherapy is about. It's, you know, we are not here to solve your problems. We're here to get you to realize you can sort this yourself, almost, you know. And back to stories again, to tell the story.
Yeah. Which is why I really wanted to do this podcast, because just like yourself, I actually did study journalism as part of one of my subjects for the arts, you know, degree in arts. So that part of me is still alive and well, and it was lovely to get the opportunity to do the podcast. And I'm finding that, I suppose, the main thing that I'm getting from the podcast is that it's getting people to realize that all therapists are still people. They have their story, and that kind of breaks the wall and the barriers of, like you said, the one that tilts their head and is a bit cold in the room. Like it's breaking that down, like chiseling it out, you know. So just to make us more human and more accessible. Yeah,
absolutely. And, you know, you're taught a certain language when you train as a psychotherapist, and I think sometimes we become too rigid in that language. Do you know? And I think, you know, if every single therapist literally swallowed the books and followed that language, we would all be quite sane. Do you know? It leaves little room for that kind of human difference. So yeah, like, you know, you've got 10 people doing a course and everyone's going to be a different therapist, and that's based on experience as well.
That's it, exactly. Yeah, no two people in your group will be the same because they haven't done the same studies that you have, or they haven't been in the same positions in life as you have. Unless you walk in your shoes, they're not going to know much about that. But I suppose just kind of just seeing that connection, that human connection, is just it underpins everything that we do. And you said it there when you're saying that, you sit on the ground, you connect on their level. And if you talk about dogs or Love Island, whatever it is, you're still meeting them where they're at. And then that develops this bond, this trust. It's the foundation for every single process when there's, you spoke about it earlier as well, dyadic approaches and stuff like that. But, when you see someone in front of you and they're giving you all their stories and their worries, and they trust in you, and then you kind of put it back to them, and then they realize that, I am empowered now to help myself. But there's something in that connection and that mirroring back and everything. It's just so powerful. So it's, I suppose where I'm going with that is just, it's really nice to see that your journey is still continuing, and, you're learning so much, and like you said, it energizes you. But
you learn from your clients as well. Like I can walk out of the kind of practice room after kind of a long day on a Wednesday and go, oh my God, I've learned so much from that person. So you're the people you're working with can bring so much to your practice. And actually linking those stories I have found to be incredibly effective. So if I've got a client in my room and there's something going on with her and I have a theory about what it might be, I will use another client's experiences, obviously very kind of safely and confidentially, but I will use another client's experiences. So I will say, I had this experience recently, and I said, do you know what I'm reminded of when you're telling me that? I said, I'm reminded of another guy I work with who told me this and this and this, and it was because of this. So I kind of present my theory in somebody else's terms, because it also validates them. Oh, Jesus, this has happened to somebody else. And oh my God, and sometimes they'll go, yeah, no, that's not. But in this case, they went, oh my God, that's exactly the same as me. So you can instead of kind of jumping in with it, I think I know what's going on, you can paint it in different ways that make it easy for them to identify with.
Reframing it and relaying that information that they've just said to you in a different way. And like being like you said, you have your theories, but just doing it in that lovely narrative is so much more rich. Absolutely. There's so much you can learn from clients. Like I was speaking to Leora Soto. She's an Israeli art therapist, and she told me before that one of her clients said, I'm going to help you help me. So, I'm going to teach you how to help me. And that's the job of the client, is to sit with you and they will show you how to help them. And I think
what a lovely way to look at it.
It's so beautiful, because it is that, because every person's going to be different, everybody needs a different approach, but they will show you the way of what they need, and then ultimately you're giving it back to them so they can then help themselves.
That's a really nice way to look at family therapy, because that's exactly it. They bring it to the room, and you're holding different stories at the same time, but they bring it to the room, and it is that you're kind of handing it back to them, but you're making them see what's going on. I suppose they're skills that I'm kind of obviously learning so much at the moment, but like it is fascinating to watch. It's wonderful, and it's a privilege. It's amazing to watch and be part of that.
It's pulling threads to make a tapestry, isn't it? It's just all these different threads, and you're making a different tapestry for people. And
actually threads came up in supervision last week, after one of the therapists had worked with the client, and we came back in as the team, we were discussing, and it was which thread did we want to pull? And that's the fascinating thing about the reflecting team process, is that each one of us had a completely different thread we wanted to pull. And that is that's amazing learning, because they were all saying one thing and I was saying, and they were all looking, going, what? And I was going, and they went, wow, I never saw that. So it is, we just, and different people, I think you mentioned this earlier on as well, we will react differently to different clients.
Yes.
They will bring different things up in us, and that ability to be reflexive is again something I've never really been taught, I suppose. You study psychology, you do maths. It's not, you don't really get these kind of skills or this type of learning that you do in a master's like this one,
Yeah. So it's really rich learning for you. It's gorgeous. Yeah. Well, I wish you the very best with it, and I'd love to check in with you when you're fully qualified, and we'll have the chats about how that's going, because it's lovely to hear your journey. I know that's a very cheesy word that we're not really loving at the moment. It's the zeitgeist, I suppose, that journey word, but it is your own, and it has, like you said, many different crossroads in it. So it's lovely to check in.
I have dreams for the next step, so a few years. I have a bit of a 3 or 4 year plan. So that check-in could be nice. I'm dreaming of graduation, although I have another 3 years to wait. So yeah.
It's going to be worth it. It really will. Thank you so much, Jenny Ryan.
Thank you, Vicky.
If people want to get in touch with you, how can they reach you? How can they find you? Where's the best place?
Oh, at the moment I have a website. I'm not sure how much longer it's going to be there for, because it's kind of the old SuperMe website. So I need a little bit of work on that. I suppose my email address is probably the best way, which is jryanconsult@gmail.com. And bear with me. If you are reaching out, please bear with me. I do get them and I do reply. Sometimes it just takes a few days.
Of course, yes, and of course you'll get back to them. I'll put it in on the notes as well for this podcast. Anything that you've mentioned, I will put it in there as the notes. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, Vicky. A privilege.